It was a cold, dreary morning. The streets were still wet from last night's rain, and the air hung heavy with the scent of damp pavement. Emma Brown, a young woman in her early 20s, carefully stepped over the puddles, clutching her small bag of breakfast in one hand and a pair of old, worn-out cleaning gloves in the other. She didn't have much, but she had enough to get by. Barely. The uniform she wore was faded and too big for her, and the shoes were worn thin from constant use. But she kept walking, her eyes focused straight ahead, determined not to be late for her shift at Blueview Towers, the upscale hotel where she worked as a cleaner. The city felt quiet, almost deserted, with only the distant hum of traffic breaking the silence. The wet streets reflected the gray sky above, and Emma's footsteps echoed in the empty spaces between the buildings. She hurried along, careful not to slip on the slick pavement, her breath visible in the chilly air. She hadn't eaten much, just a small piece of bread and water, but it was enough to get through the day. She had long given up on luxuries like hot breakfasts or a comfortable life. All she cared about now was holding on to her job at Blueview Towers. As Emma approached the main road, the sound of an engine roared in the distance. It grew louder, and before she could even take a step back, a sleek white SUV sped toward her, tires skimming across the wet ground. The car was moving fast, and as it hit a deep puddle, a wave of muddy water splashed over her. The shock of the cold, dirty water hitting her skin was immediate. Her clothes, her face, even her hair were soaked in brown muck. She froze for a moment, her eyes wide in disbelief. Inside the car, the tinted windows slowly rolled down, revealing a well-dressed woman in her late 30s, with perfectly styled hair, oversized sunglasses, and bright red lipstick. The woman glanced briefly at Emma, the disdain evident in her expression. "Watch where you stand next time," she shouted through the window, her tone dripping with arrogance. And then, without a second glance, she drove off, leaving Emma standing in the street, drenched and humiliated. Emma stood motionless for a moment, her lips trembling, the sting of the insult still fresh. But she didn't cry. She simply gathered her bag, her head held a little higher, and continued walking toward Blueview Towers. The insult, though cruel, wasn't new. She had grown accustomed to people like that, the privileged ones who saw others as beneath them. The only thing she could do now was to clean herself up and move on. She had no choice. She had a job to do, and nothing would stop her from doing it. Across the street, a sleek black car sat quietly, parked near the sidewalk. Inside, a man named Lucas Williams, a wealthy CEO with a quiet reputation, observed the entire scene. His eyes narrowed as he watched the woman, Sophia Williams, laugh and drive off, leaving Emma behind in the mud. Lucas had seen it all. The splash, the laughter, the cruelty. His gaze darkened as he watched Emma's composure, even as she stood there humiliated, and he made a mental note to learn more about her. Lucas knew Sophia well. His wife, the famous fashion mogul, was known for her sharp tongue and even sharper disregard for people she deemed beneath her. But what Sophia didn't know was that today she had crossed a line. Lucas felt a quiet fury stir inside him. It wasn't just the injustice of the situation. It was the feeling of helplessness that many people like Emma experienced every day. But Lucas wasn't the type to let things like this slide. He calmly reached for his phone and issued a simple command. "Find out who that girl is." There was something about her, something different, and he wanted to know everything about her. Little did Emma know that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't have imagined. Meanwhile, at Blueview Towers, Emma arrived, looking like a storm had passed through her. Her once clean uniform now clung to her skin, the stains from the muddy water still fresh. As she walked into the side entrance of the hotel, her supervisor, Mr. Clark, frowned at her disheveled appearance. "Emma, you're late," he barked, not even giving her a chance to explain. "And what is this mess? You need to get it together. This place needs to be spotless before the guests arrive." Emma lowered her head, trying to keep her emotions in check. She wasn't in the mood for reprimands. "I was splashed by a car," she said softly, trying to hold back the tears. "I tried to clean up." "No excuses," Mr. Clark snapped. "Just get to work." Emma nodded silently and walked toward the cleaning closet. As she passed by her coworkers, she could feel their eyes on her, their silent pity, but no one offered to help. No one spoke a word of comfort. They were all too focused on their own work, too caught up in their own lives to care about hers. But Emma didn't need their pity. She had learned long ago that she had to rely on herself. She changed into her backup uniform, tied her hair into a bun, and began cleaning as though nothing had happened. She pushed the humiliation aside, focusing instead on the job at hand. She thought of her little sister back at home, still asleep in their small apartment. She thought of how much she needed this job and how she would never give up. As she worked, Lucas continued to watch from afar. He had seen everything, and he couldn't shake the image of Emma standing in the mud, her dignity intact despite the cruelty she had just endured. There was something about her that reminded him of his mother. Strong, quiet, and never asking for help. He wasn't sure what he would do with this newfound knowledge yet, but he knew he couldn't just let it go. The day was just beginning, but for Emma, it felt like the world was already weighing down on her. And yet, she pushed forward, determined to keep going. Emma had arrived a little earlier than usual, hoping for a smooth start to the day. The familiar feeling of her worn-out uniform and scuffed shoes was something she had grown used to, though it didn't make it any easier. She had one goal: to complete her work at Blueview Towers and get through the day without encountering any more obstacles than necessary. It was just another day in her routine, and Emma simply wanted to go unnoticed. She never expected anything extraordinary. She simply sought a sense of normalcy, to work and take care of her family. As she walked down the sidewalk near the hotel, the air was still damp from the rain the night before, and the streets glistened under the dull light of the overcast sky. The city was slowly coming to life, with cars passing by, the occasional pedestrian walking briskly, and the sound of faraway chatter drifting through the cool morning air. Emma kept her head down, eyes focused ahead, as she made her way to the staff entrance. She didn't want to draw any attention to herself. After all, she had no desire to stand out. She was just another cleaning staff member in a hotel full of wealthy guests, executives, and elites. But as she neared the intersection, the sound of an engine roaring grew louder. And before Emma could even register what was happening, a sleek white luxury SUV came speeding down the street. She barely had time to step back before the car hit a large puddle of water, sending a torrent of muddy water splashing toward her. The cold, murky liquid hit her from head to toe, soaking her uniform, her bag, and even her face. It was as though the world had come crashing down in that instant, and for a brief moment, Emma stood there frozen in shock. Inside the vehicle, Sophia Williams, dressed impeccably in her high-end designer clothes, a bright red lipstick coating her lips, and oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, leaned out of the window and let out a loud, mocking laugh as she glanced over at Emma. With a sneer, Sophia shouted through the window, "Don't stand in the road if you don't want to get wet." And with that, she floored the gas pedal, the SUV speeding off without even a second thought. The sound of the car's engine fading into the distance was replaced by a deafening silence in Emma's ears. She could feel the sting of embarrassment, the burn in her eyes from holding back tears, but she did not let them fall. Her emotions were raw, and yet in that moment, all she could do was stand still for a second, the humiliation lingering in the air like a heavy weight. But she couldn't afford to let it consume her. She had to keep going. Slowly, Emma collected herself, brushing off the dirt from her soaked bag and straightening her clothes. Though she knew the damage was done, she took a deep breath, inhaling the cold morning air as she wiped the mud from her face, her hands trembling slightly. She could feel the eyes of passers-by on her, but she didn't care. Emma picked up her pace, determined not to let this moment define her. She had a job to do. Across the street, hidden in the shadows of a sleek black car, Lucas Williams, Sophia's husband, had witnessed the entire scene unfold. He had been sitting in the car, waiting for his next appointment, when his gaze landed on Emma. He watched as the SUV sped by, splashing her with mud, and saw Sophia's gleeful expression as she mocked the young woman. Lucas's sharp eyes caught every detail, from the moment the car hit the puddle to the sneer on his wife's face. His expression hardened as he saw how Emma stood there, soaking wet, holding back tears, but showing nothing more than quiet strength. Lucas knew his wife all too well. Sophia had always been self-centered and arrogant, but seeing her treat someone with such blatant disrespect stirred something inside him. He was used to Sophia's entitled attitude, but he couldn't ignore the image of Emma, the way she had remained calm despite the cruel treatment she had just endured. Lucas could feel a quiet anger simmering inside him, and for the first time in a long while he felt a need to do something. But for now, he didn't move. He simply observed, his mind already calculating how he might intervene. After the incident, Emma continued walking to Blueview Towers, her mind clouded with the sting of the humiliation. As she arrived at the hotel, her heart sank. The wet uniform clung to her body, and she could feel the eyes of everyone around her. Her coworkers didn't say anything, but she could feel their pity-laden stares. They saw her, but none of them offered help. No one stepped in to comfort her or ask if she was okay. She was just another cleaner in the hotel, a faceless figure that people either ignored or looked down upon. Inside, her supervisor, Mr. Clark, immediately noticed her disheveled appearance and scowled. "Emma, you're late," he snapped, not even giving her a chance to explain. "And what's this mess? Get it together." His words were sharp, his tone dismissive. "Was splashed by a car," Emma said, trying to hold back the frustration that was building inside her. "I tried to clean up, but—" "No excuses," Mr. Clark interrupted, waving her off. "You still need to get to work. There's no time for complaints." He gestured to the hallway. "The lobby needs to be spotless before the guests arrive. Now get moving." Emma nodded silently, her heart sinking deeper. As she walked to the cleaning closet, she overheard a few whispers from her coworkers. They didn't speak to her, but she could hear their muttered comments. "Poor girl," one of them said. "She got the worst of it." Emma didn't respond, but it stung. She didn't want anyone's pity. She just wanted to get through the day. She quickly changed into her backup uniform, her worn shoes squeaking on the polished floor. Though her heart felt heavy, she carried on. She knew that nothing would change unless she took action. She couldn't afford to give in to the weight of the world's unfairness, not today. What she didn't know was that Lucas Williams, still observing from afar, was making a mental note of the injustice he had just witnessed. And although his silence was deafening, Emma's story wasn't over. Something was changing, and it would soon become clear that no one could escape the consequences of their actions, not even the privileged. After witnessing the humiliating incident with Sophia, Lucas Williams found himself unable to shake the image of Emma standing there, soaked in mud, but refusing to let her composure falter. The moment stuck with him, gnawing at him in a way he hadn't expected. Sophia, as he well knew, had always been self-centered, but to treat someone with such disdain for no reason, especially someone like Emma, felt wrong to him. As much as Lucas had tried to ignore it, he couldn't forget how she had quietly endured the situation without retaliating. Lucas couldn't just let it go. He wasn't the type to stand idly by while someone suffered, even if the person in question was only a cleaner in his wife's world. What bothered him more was the realization that Emma's situation wasn't just about one incident, it was about a systemic attitude of disregard for people like her. As the CEO of a company with its roots in privilege, Lucas knew the depth of the societal divide that existed. But something about Emma's dignity in the face of injustice stirred something in him. He could see a quiet strength in her, something deeper than just resilience. It was the kind of strength that couldn't be measured by titles or wealth, but by the way someone carried themselves despite adversity. He wasn't going to let her story end as a forgotten tale of mistreatment. So, he set his mind to find out more about Emma. The next morning, Lucas instructed his team to discreetly gather information about her. He asked them to dig into her background, to find out who she was beyond her job as a hotel cleaner. He wasn't sure what he was hoping to find, but something told him Emma had a story that needed to be heard. The team's findings were more telling than Lucas had expected. Emma wasn't just another hotel employee, she was a woman with a purpose. A woman with a heart. She lived with her younger sister, Olivia, after their mother passed away 2 years ago. Emma, despite her challenging circumstances, had never complained. She worked 2 cleaning jobs just to make ends meet, all while caring for her sister and ensuring that she didn't have to grow up in the same hardship Emma had faced. The details painted a picture of a hard-working young woman doing everything she could for the family she loved, sacrificing her dreams to give her sister a better life. Lucas felt a deep admiration for her strength. He could see now that Emma wasn't just another face in the crowd. Her quiet determination resonated with him in a way he hadn't anticipated. The fact that she continued to work hard and remain composed in the face of such a cruel world made him wonder how many other people like her were out there, hidden behind the masks of society's expectations. But there was something else that troubled him: Sophia's continued lack of empathy toward Emma. Lucas had always known Sophia's attitude toward the world was often cold and self-serving, but her callous treatment of Emma made him question his own complicity in her behavior. He had always turned a blind eye to the small cruelties Sophia indulged in, but watching her mock a woman who had already been beaten down by life made Lucas feel uncomfortable. It was as if his wife was taking pleasure in the degradation of someone less fortunate. And in that moment, Lucas realized just how far apart he and Sophia were, despite being married for so long. Sophia, on the other hand, continued to treat Emma with complete disdain. She seemed to take pride in belittling her and making her feel small. The more Lucas observed, the more he saw the sharp contrast between Emma's humble dignity and Sophia's entitled arrogance. While Sophia spent her days surrounded by wealth and luxury, it became clear to Lucas that Emma possessed a quiet power that many people, including himself, failed to recognize. It wasn't something that could be bought or acquired through status, and it certainly couldn't be flaunted. It was something intrinsic, something that made Emma stand tall even when the world tried to knock her down. The realization hit him like a wave, and he knew he had to do something. The way Emma had handled the entire situation, her grace, her resilience, had left a lasting impact on him. She deserved more than just his silent observation. She deserved a chance to rise above her circumstances, to have her story changed, and to be seen for the remarkable person she truly was. Lucas didn't know what exactly he would do to help, but he knew that he couldn't remain a passive observer any longer. The thought of continuing to let Sophia, or anyone for that matter, treat people like Emma with such disregard filled him with a quiet anger. He knew that Emma's life didn't have to be defined by hardship and ridicule. So, Lucas made a decision. He was going to change the course of her life, even if it meant going against the tide of the world that Sophia and others like her inhabited. He wasn't going to let someone like Emma get lost in the shadows any longer. And with that, Lucas set a plan in motion. A plan that would not only lift Emma from the shadows, but also show her that someone saw her, not just as a cleaner, but as a woman with value, strength, and the potential for a future far beyond what she could have imagined. Emma had barely had time to recover from the humiliation earlier that day when something unexpected happened. As she walked into the staff room the next morning, something caught her eye. There, sitting quietly in her locker, was a small, crumpled paper bag. At first, she thought nothing of it, as her locker was often filled with the usual assortment of cleaning supplies and the occasional forgotten item. But something about this bag felt different. Curious, she opened it cautiously, unsure of what she might find. Inside, there was a pair of new, crisp cleaning gloves, unlike the worn-out ones she had been using for months, and a sandwich wrapped carefully in foil. The smell of the warm sandwich filled her senses, and Emma's stomach growled in appreciation. But it wasn't just the food that caught her attention. Tucked beneath the sandwich was a small, folded note. She unfolded the paper and read the message: "For the girl who always holds her head high, even when the world is unfair." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She was used to being overlooked, to being invisible in the eyes of the people who mattered. But this simple act of kindness felt like a lifeline, like someone had seen her in a way no one else had. Who would leave something like this for her? It was impossible to know. There was no note signed with a name, no identifying mark, just those words that seemed to resonate with everything she had been going through. She felt an overwhelming sense of warmth, but she didn't know how to process it. Was it someone from the staff who had taken pity on her? Or perhaps someone who had noticed how unfairly she had been treated? Despite her swirling thoughts, Emma chose to keep the moment to herself. She couldn't afford to get her hopes up. The last thing she wanted was to be seen as weak or dependent. Instead, she tucked the note into her pocket and ate the sandwich in quiet solitude. She had learned long ago to put her feelings aside and focus on getting through each day, no matter how hard it was. Little did Emma know, the kindness she had received was part of a larger plan, one that had been set in motion by none other than Lucas Williams. After witnessing the way Emma was treated, Lucas had quietly begun watching over her. He had seen her strength, her determination, and he knew that she deserved more than the life she was living. His actions were subtle, but his impact was starting to be felt. Lucas knew that the change in Emma's life had to come from more than just one isolated act of kindness. It had to be something that would allow her to rise above the limitations she had been placed in. He had seen something in her that others hadn't. The quiet strength, the resilience, and he believed that she could achieve more if given the chance. So he had begun his quiet work behind the scenes, ensuring that Emma would be treated with the dignity she deserved, even if she didn't know it yet. While Emma continued to clean the hotel with the same dedication she always had, little did she know that her life was beginning to shift. The bag with the gloves and the sandwich wasn't a one-off gesture. There was more to come. She would receive more small acts of kindness, each one making her feel a little less invisible, a little less forgotten. It was as though someone was watching out for her, helping her inch toward something greater, though Emma never saw who was behind it. For Emma, the changes came slowly. Her uniform, her work environment, none of it transformed overnight. But the feeling she had, that quiet sense that someone cared, made it easier to get through each day. She started to feel a little lighter, a little more hopeful, as if there was something more waiting for her. Perhaps, just perhaps, she wasn't as insignificant as she had always believed. And all the while Lucas watched from the shadows. He saw her strength in the way she worked, the way she carried herself even in the face of hardship. He knew it was time to do more, but for now he was content to let Emma come into her own. His plan was working, quietly, steadily, but most importantly, it was giving Emma the confidence she had always lacked. She was about to step into a world that had long been closed off to her, and she would soon realize that she had far more potential than she had ever imagined. Emma's life had shifted dramatically in the past few months. What had started as a simple act of kindness from an unexpected source had transformed her entire career and sense of self-worth. Now she stood in the lobby of Blueview Towers, her new uniform crisp and fitting her perfectly, a stark contrast to the old, worn-out clothes she had once worn. She had been promoted to the position of VIP floor manager, a role that came with a significant pay raise and, more importantly, a newfound respect from both her colleagues and the guests. Her daily responsibilities had changed, as had the way people treated her. No longer seen as just a cleaner, Emma was now the face that greeted the hotel's most important clients. Her role had placed her in the spotlight, and with it, she had gained confidence that radiated from her every action. People no longer looked at her with pity or indifference. They looked at her with admiration, recognizing her strength and professionalism. Emma's story had gone from one of silent struggle to one of quiet triumph. But she still didn't know the full extent of the help she had received behind the scenes. It wasn't until one afternoon, as she was adjusting her new manager's badge in the mirror, that Lucas Williams approached her. His quiet presence had become a familiar one in her life, but today, there was something different about the way he spoke. "You've earned this, Emma," Lucas said, his voice steady but warm. "I've been watching you for a long time now. I saw the way you carried yourself, even when no one else did, and I couldn't just stand by and let you continue to be overlooked." Emma turned to face him, her heart racing. You helped me?" Lucas nodded. "Yes, I've been making sure that your hard work didn't go unnoticed. And it's not just about this promotion. It's about changing the way people see you. You have so much more potential than anyone gave you credit for." Emma was speechless. She had no idea that someone, especially someone like Lucas, had been watching her from afar, recognizing her value when no one else did. She had always worked hard, not for recognition, but simply because it was what she had to do to survive. But now she realized that her efforts hadn't been in vain. They had been seen, and they had been appreciated. Meanwhile, Sophia Williams, who had once looked down on Emma and treated her like nothing more than an invisible servant, began to feel the tide turning against her. Word had gotten around that Emma had been quietly supported by powerful people, including Lucas. And soon enough, the people who had once admired Sophia's wealth and arrogance began to question her behavior. The tipping point came when a photo of Sophia laughing as she splashed mud on Emma in the street was leaked online. It wasn't long before the public backlash began to grow, and the once proud fashion mogul found herself under a spotlight she wasn't prepared for. Sophia's world started to unravel as the media and her followers turned on her. The image of her cruelty to Emma, something she had brushed off as a minor act, was now part of the narrative that defined her. People began to distance themselves from Sophia. Clients who had once flocked to her fashion shows began to cancel contracts, and her social media accounts were flooded with criticism. The cold, distant image she had so carefully crafted began to shatter, and with it, the support she had once taken for granted. In contrast, Emma's life flourished. No longer just a woman cleaning floors in a hotel, she had become a beacon of resilience and dignity. Her story was one of overcoming adversity, not with bitterness, but with grace. As she took her new position, she became the symbol of what true success looked like: humble, hardworking, and fair. Her journey was inspiring others, especially her colleagues, who now looked up to her not just for her work ethic, but for the example she set. As she walked through the hotel lobby, greeted by her team with genuine respect, Emma couldn't help but think of how far she had come. Just a year ago, she was invisible. Now, she was a woman who commanded attention not because of her wealth, but because of her strength and integrity. Her transformation had inspired others, but most importantly, it had inspired her. She had proven that no matter where you start in life, no matter how small or insignificant you may feel, perseverance and kindness would always rise above. She was now living proof of that. The final message of her journey was clear. Not everything you do will be recognized immediately, but persistence and kindness will ultimately be rewarded. Don't let discrimination make you falter. Always believe that you deserve to be seen. And as Emma continued her journey, her belief in herself only grew stronger. She had started as a cleaner, overlooked and dismissed, but now she was a leader, an inspiration to everyone around her. She had achieved what she had always hoped for: respect, recognition, and the opportunity to live the life she had worked so hard for. If you've ever felt overlooked or dismissed, remember Emma's story. She stood tall in the face of adversity and found strength within herself, and so can you. Don't let life's challenges define you. Keep moving forward, because your story is far from over.